All right. Here we are, JT. Welcome, everybody. We're here today. We're live at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam. And of course, we're live at JT the Brick. And JT, you now exist on so many different platforms. I see you live on Twitter. You got a radio show that is then live on YouTube, which, by the way, congratulations figuring that out. It looks amazing every time we can see
Thank you.
sort of behind the scenes and what you're doing. But every time you've got an opinion, it's this simple. You show up on YouTube, and even though you would think, all right, doesn't JT have enough places to get his opinion out? But no, it's not true. It's not true because sometimes there's a little bit left in the tank, and we got to get something else out there. And I want to just jump into one thing that is huge. First of all, yes, look, we're here during the summer. A lot of people are not necessarily on the way they should, not that they should be, but there's a lot of different voices show up, a lot of lists, a lot of a little off the beaten path from what traditional sports talk can be. This is when people get really creative and interesting, and sometimes it's fun and interesting for the audience, and sometimes it's really hokey and ridiculous. But I want to talk about something concrete. I want to jump into something first that is very concrete that happened, that is a huge event. And there's a big difference between the NBA draft and the NFL draft. And I know you really dissected this very specifically yesterday. The NBA draft is an introduction to 60 new players into this league, and yet I'm not sure we necessarily got that from the broadcast. But I want to just get your perspective overall on the NBA draft. I want to jump right into that, JT. Let me know what, not necessarily just what you thought specifically on this one, but overall the NBA draft. Just give it to me.
Well, it could quite possibly be the worst television broadcast in the history of sports. Okay, you want to go Mount Rushmore? Let's go Mount Rushmore. It was so bizarre and bad that I wanted to do a podcast with Looney and one with you on this. Bill Simmons kind of took the lead on that. Bill Simmons went after it hard. And I said it before Bill Simmons because I was on the radio and I was watching this happen and develop, and it was just poorly executed because they didn't have the right guy. So this doesn't get taken out of context. People can clip everything you're doing here, thinking out loud, and share it. I'm a Stephen A guy. You bring in Stephen A for energy, information, and basketball, and eyeballs, because he's the number one guy there now at ESPN. So you got to put him on the broadcast, period. Just like when Gruden was the voice of Monday Night Football, he's on the broadcast in the NFL draft. But to have Kendrick Perkins, who brought nothing to the broadcast because he doesn't know anything about European players and not a lot about college players. Jay Billis, check mark, he's fine. Malika Andrews made a couple of mistakes, but that's okay. She's the host, and the host is going to make a couple of mistakes during the live broadcast. Sam, as I was texting you during it, they just didn't have enough information. They were overwhelmed by not knowing the players. And then this Ace Bailey kid, turns out he doesn't even want to play in the NBA. He doesn't want to go to Utah. He didn't interview with anybody. And that was a breaking news story. And they didn't prep for that. And they didn't know how to cover that breaking news story.
Look, it comes down to this. The NFL draft is done so well. Let's just say the NFL draft, which you can consume that on NFL Network. You can consume it on ESPN. It's done so precisely. I mean, day 3 of the NFL draft, you are learning specifics about players. We're talking about the 6th round of the NFL draft, and there are players, and you've got Daniel Jeremiah giving me precise points to look at for what this player is going to bring to my team or a rival's team, etc. The NBA draft, it seemed as if it was just an extension of the NBA Finals. Now, granted, we had an NBA Finals that went 7 games, which is rare, so you had fewer days between the end of the season and the NBA draft. But it was almost as if it was just it was as if we said, all right, here's the game broadcast from everyone that just brought you OKC and Indiana, and now we're just going to float out the idea that these are the same topics that apply to the NBA draft. It doesn't. There is a science to the NBA draft. There are people that aren't associated with the NBA throughout the season at all that know the most about these players. We're talking about inside, dirty, down, in the trenches, high school basketball, transfer portal, international stars, right? These are not things that apply necessarily to your day-to-day NBA schedule, certainly not to your playoff teams, superstar conversations. These are players nobody knows about, JT. Nobody understands what's going on when a player's transferring from Washington to Arizona. That's not your typical fan is not following that. Yet to understand the NBA draft, you have to know that player's journey from that point. What happened? This kid's a 4-star, a 5-star in high school. He shows up in one college. A coach is now stealing him to another college. Like, these are the stories that matter. It's really simple to me. The NFL draft is so smart with who is on these panels? Who are the experts bringing you the information? These are people beyond your traditional NFL faces. These are people that understand the colleges, understand the players, understand the personnel, the front offices. It's as simple as this. I don't understand, why were there not more college coaches all over this? If I'm a college coach in the Big Ten, not only do I understand the kids that I tried to recruit for my team, what about the teams I'm preparing for all season? All the players that applied, that showed up on my schedule, are now players that I'm basically an expert on, or had to be for that week to get ready for them. I'm going to have something on this player. This player showed up and did X, Y, and Z to my team, or this in the conference this season. Those are the people that are, that's easy plucking from the tree, the people that are going to know information about these players. And I want to say this, it's not necessarily about people that were on these broadcasts that were doing something wrong. I think you're putting people in a terrible spot. You're not allowing somebody who does have the homework already done to be on there instead. And that's what you have to find. You have to find people that are not necessarily your expert broadcasters, but people that know these players. Those are the stories you want to bring to the table. You need people that understand these families, that have been in living rooms during recruiting trips, that have followed these players internationally, that are in. I mean, think about just when Windhorst 2 years ago, I thought this was great. Windhorst 2 years ago was with Wemby in France, with the conversation.
Right. Good point.
That sometimes you have to follow the story to the source to go get it. That was so interesting, and that brought him into our living rooms in a different way.
Yeah, a lot there to unpack. First off, there's a bigger topic that you're missing. The bigger topic is, who picked the talent? That's the topic. You worked at the highest level of a couple of big networks. There are politics on who gets the seat. My longtime agent for years, Miller Broadcast, always told me one thing: keep the seat. Well, I'm doing that. No, keep the seat. And I think part of my life story is I've kept the seat as long as anybody in regards to that. When you have a job, try to keep it. Well, all of a sudden that doesn't work now. So let me get this straight. I don't know of a guy that loves female broadcasters as much as I do. I've worked with Beth Mowins with the Raiders. I'm sitting there tweeting during the NBA Finals, lay off of Doris, leave Doris alone, because everybody's saying Doris is walking the plank. They're not going to bring her back. But I'm saying, no, the biggest story is we got Monica McNutt doing every interview. Okay. And then we have another WNBA gal, forget that I don't know her name. She's on the dais. So we're using WNBA talent at the NBA draft. So does that mean we're going to use NBA talent at the WNBA draft? Are we going to see Richard Jefferson or Kendrick Perkins work the WNBA draft and be there interviewing everybody off the stage? No, because Rebecca Lobo and all the gals who do a great job have that job. So that was interesting to me. And then the Perkins thing, as he's going after Simmons, I'm coming for you, which I don't know if you saw that. But the thing about Perk is he cut the line. And I'm a big topic guy on people who cut the line. I started in overnight radio. You can't start harder than that. So now you got 7 guys on a radio show, and then they show 3 more behind the glass with open microphones, waving, wearing costumes. I hate that shit. I go nuts on that. And I'm watching Perkins, and I'm like, let's think of every single broadcaster at FS1, ESPN, Turner, about to go to NBC and Amazon. And Kendrick Perkins is up there with no knowledge of foreign basketball players and little to no knowledge of college players. Someone picked him to be there. That's the topic.
Okay, so you're absolutely right, and I said it. You're putting people in a bad spot. Where are you finding the talent that wasn't so obvious, that wasn't right there with you for the NBA Finals? Where are the people that have these stories that you can put on instead of Perk, or bring Perk on for something specific? When OKC makes a draft pick, when Boston makes a draft pick, you want to have Perkins talk about what it was like to welcome a new kid into the league. That's a great story. Perkins should tell a story about what it's like for these rookies. What's going to happen at Summer League for these players? How are these players, when you're not when you're not a lottery pick, what's it like? You show up on this team, you're not the next, again, you're not the 7-footer Wembanyama that's going to change the face of this franchise. You're somebody that's hoping to make an impact the way Isaiah Thomas is as the last pick of the draft a decade ago, right? I mean, you're hoping to be something, right? You're hoping to make a crack on this team. What's it going to be like for you? That's the story I want Perkins to tell. He's an expert at that story. He lived that experience. He understands what it's like to be a veteran on a team. Frankly, he understands what it's like to actually be a newbie on a team also. Tell both of those stories.
But Sam, you want to give us more information, which I love about you. You want more information crammed into the 5-10 minutes, and not the second round, because second round's faster. Of
course.
You want more information there, which I believe has to do with resources. So I believe I saw Shire, the coach of Duke, there. The Rutgers had 2 players in the top 5. It would have been great if those coaches quickly said something. But remember, they had the B-roll of the video. So kid gets drafted, Ace Bailey. They show us him dunking and running the court, and they use the term versatility and shot blocker. The package that they have for each player is exceptional. That's ESPN. They do it better than anybody. But then afterwards, they threw it to the desk, and everybody's just looking around at Malika like, Jay Billis, you got us. And he was able to do that. And Simmons picked up on it. You did, I did. And I think the millions, I don't know how many people watched, but the people who watched, I think they saw how clunky and uncomfortable it was. And I think it was, as I like more Bobby Marks. I want to hear how the player, Bob Myers was on ABC with Stephen A. And I don't think they utilized Bob Myers. Bob Myers was the architect of a dynasty. So when you take a player and he goes number 7, I want Bob Myers to say, or number 5 to Utah. Danny Ainge is the GM. This is what he's got to work with. I think this pick fits or doesn't. I would have traded back to get this shooting guard because I think that's a bigger need.
This is what happens. You've got the time, but when the draft pick is taken to when the next one is. So you've got those, let's say you've got those 5-6 minutes right there. That's the introduction of this player to the world. Think about this is on ABC. Forget about ESPN, right? On ABC, you've got people that are watching that are waiting for Wheel of Fortune, right? That are sitting there watching this draft. These are the people. You're talking to people who don't know the NBA inside and out, right? That's what you're talking about. This is this player's one chance to be introduced to the world. He's not going to make an impact on this team in next season. This isn't going to be someone that you're seeing day in and day out when the league actually starts. This is his moment. This might be the greatest moment of his life. This might be the crowning achievement. The NBA draft doesn't give us 60 stars in the league. It gives us 8. The NBA draft is brutal. They say if you don't have a lottery pick, you basically not even be there. When this player's name is announced, this is the chance to tell the story. You talk about homework, you talk about information. All of the information that you have on this player should be jammed into those 5 minutes before the next pick comes off the clock. Before I see Adam Silver again, you got to give me everything you know about Ace Bailey right in that moment, and it can't be fluff. And even the Bobby Marks part of it, that's on the back end. First, I want to know about the player. Then I want to know a little about how he fits into that team. Fine. But it can't just be about fitting into this team immediately. No. It's about the player, the personality, the specifics. You have to find the people that can tell those stories. I need stories in that moment and not just the fluff of where this is and now this team now sits at 6 in the East. However, it's not about that on the NBA draft. That's later. Winners and losers of the draft is later. And frankly, that's where Stephen A. excels. Give me the totality of the draft and then tell me how it fit in and who did a great job and who missed on something. That's great. I want that perspective eventually. But on the broadcast, on ABC, 5 minutes before Silver's coming with the next pick, I need to know about this player. His dad did this to get him to this point. His mom raised him alone. Whatever those stories are, that's where I want to hear them right there. As soon as that tape runs out, that's the story I want.
Well, I think another big topic is the fact that ESPN had no competition. So when the draft goes on and it goes on NFL Network and Rich Eisen, I want to get to Mike Mayock in a second, and then you go to ESPN and the arms race to get the talent. On ESPN, it was Todd McShay, it was Mel Kiper, John Gruden. But then if you didn't like that coverage or I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you wanted to go over to NFL Network, it was just as good. Just as good. Rich Eisen, who anchors everything, is anchoring it. You got Daniel Jeremiah. And I remember with Mike Mayock, before he got the job with the Raiders, a lot of people said, well, how is he getting the job with the Raiders? I said, what the heck? What are you talking about? The guy knows college football and talent better than anybody, literally. And Daniel Jeremiah took his spot, and that was his mentor. And then Mike was able to get the Raider job, and what they do, they drafted some pretty good players, Max Crosby, Hunter Renfroe, some good players, missed on a lot of players, but he was great on the broadcast because on that broadcast, he was able to tell everybody quickly about the player, how good he is, maybe a little nugget on the backstory. And then the host, either Rich Eisen or Chris Berman, back in the day, would say, oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more on that. And that was more chaos. There's a lot more chaos in the NFL draft than there is in the NBA draft. But Sam, a last point on this. Here's where ESPN missed the boat. They didn't realize, nor did I, that this was going to be such a big Parisian Paris draft. They didn't. They should have known. And they should have had a correspondent who was there just to talk about the players from Spain and France, tie it up quickly, and then let Billis take over with his notes. They didn't have that.
I also want to give credit. I want to give credit to Bill Simmons because I promise you this. We are saying it right now. Everyone that's watching and listening and in the comments with us right now, I want you to take this day, remember what this conversation is, and watch the draft next year and see the differences.
Good point.
What Bill Simmons just did in a very calm setting like you and I sitting here doing a podcast, what Bill Simmons did, he actually changed the draft coverage for next season. You may think it's just somebody talking and throwing an opinion out, or maybe he's bitter about whatever you think about that. Trust me on this. Bill Simmons has enough friends in the building where that broadcast took place that there are people in buildings on the 5th, 6th, 7th floor, on the top floor, the higher ups as we call them, right? Guess what? They're embarrassed that Bill Simmons just called this out the way they did. They know that Bill Simmons also reaches a lot of people that were also watching the draft. These changes will be made not because those people had the opinion, but because Bill Simmons did and said it the way that he did. And that embarrassed there won't be a defense of this because ESPN there is no post NBA draft now for ESPN to go on and say, oh well, here's why we did it, right? There's no defending it at this point. The only thing you do to adjust it is you change it next season, and I promise you, JT, there will be international scouts on this broadcast next season. There will be coaches. Where's John Shire? We know Cooper Flagg's going first, right? Just have Shire out there for the first 15 minutes, right? Just sit there and have that Cooper Flagg conversation with the guy that spent all the time with him at Duke. That's easy. Now nobody else has to worry. There is no homework to be done. Shire did the homework 5 years ago. It's done. This will change. So I want to give the credit there because it's comments like that you may think are just filling space. They make a difference in the world. This broadcast will be different because of that. I promise you.
Yeah. But again, you're right. But the thing that is a delicate topic, and I'm very delicate with this, is if you're going to put the WNBA gals on the NBA broadcast, okay, you did it. What are you doing with the WNBA with the guys? Because they wanted to have the WNBA analyst on the dais. They wanted to have Monica McNutt talk about everyone's drip and what they're wearing and mom and all that. And they wanted to do that. That took someone's job who does that for the NBA. They're out. And we're going to move them in to do it. Fair enough. They'll be evaluated on what they did. And again, I'm all for it's pretty interesting. I love female empowerment, but I hate NBA empowerment. I despise the empowerment of the NBA and players like Durant just blew up the Suns on his way out to Houston after he blew up the Nets on his way to Phoenix. But the empowerment of who gets picked for broadcasting is, you started this off welcoming me saying, well, all the different platforms I'm on. Well, I'm on my platforms and some other cool ones, Sirius XM and what I do for the Raiders, but I earned my spots there. Now, maybe there are people better than I. That's a great conversation to have, but I earned my spot to get in there. And we're in this era now where people are cutting the line and they're getting radio shows. You want to get a podcast, anybody can have a podcast. That's what we're doing here. Anybody can have one, and some are better than others, but this whole thing now, I don't have a radio show, but can I come on your radio show and intern for free, but be on the microphone and be on the camera? Who the hell is the guy who decided to do that? Who gets the blame for all that bullshit that's going on now, that when I turn on a show in the car or television, I'm hearing voices that shouldn't be on? I'll give you an example here in Vegas. I'm listening to gambling radio, And I know the guy was the board op. He was the board op because he was working in the building I worked in as the board op. And now, 2 years later, he's telling you what side he's on in the game. Well, I'm on this side of the game. Well, wait a second. You left us because you didn't make enough money as a board op. And now you're talking on a microphone on a gambling network telling everybody who to bet on? I mean, who decided that was okay? It's the wild west of broadcasting right now, Sam.
It absolutely is. But here's what's interesting about it, JT, because here's
my wife's shaking her head. My wife's shaking her head as she's bringing me a coffee.
Nobody knows
this.
better than Julie. Nobody knows better than Julie what it's like to rise the ranks, to really, truly have to earn your spot. But guess what? Julie and you also know this. It's a different world because of this statement right here. How many times has someone come to you in radio and said, by the way, I'm not making the decision for you, JT. The public is making the decision, right? I've never fired anyone in my life. It's the public that will choose whether you're here or not. Keep your seat now has a different connotation, JT, because it is the public which will now decide. That's the Wild West of what YouTube is. If people are watching, you will be rewarded. And if not, you're gone. And it's not about whether or not you went to Syracuse to get the broadcasting degree. It's whether or not the people in the comment section want to see you again tomorrow. That's what it comes down to. And the people that are making decisions are now relying on that more than what they're what their instincts are. It's no longer about instincts and gut about what you feel about somebody. It is the data of the people that are watching, and that is it. And if the board op is saying something that people are finding funny once in a while, or the host finds funny, and that show is rating better than another, that's it. No one cares anymore. It's just about that. Does the audience respond? And that has changed. And that's why I wanted to credit Simmons. Simmons represented the audience there.
Definitely.
And he's affecting change with that. All right. One other thing, JT, that I got to ask you about, because this is so hilarious. We talk about what happens after, look, the NFL season. We all know this is the NFL, and waiting for the NFL is a lot of what broadcasters will tell you this whole business is about, right? Because the NFL really runs this, and we know that. But you have the Stanley Cup final, it's done. You have the NBA finals, they're done. You even had the NBA draft, it's done. Now training camp is a month away. We are officially in, you know this. You and I spent so many years grinding through these months. I used to send faxes out to 30 baseball teams to try to get guests on for us during this time, because it was so wide open with nothing, with quote unquote, nothing happening in the world. And you have a lot of people that have the seat, that get to be on these microphones, that complain about these months instead of taking advantage of them. I want you to talk about what it's like to put content out, to do radio shows during this. This right now is officially, the clock just turned between now and when training camp begins. I will argue are the most not spoon-fed days of radio or content you'll ever do, because you have to find a hook here. It will not land in your lap.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. I came up with the term the dead zone. I don't know how I get credit for that. That was my term. And I bring it up because it's just the opposite of what I did my whole career. 30 years of doing this, and this is probably the first summer that I'm purposely not filling in on a lot of shows. For the last 5 years, I did a week or two on the Jim Rome Show, which was a really big platform, and I appreciated that. Jim changed his format from TV to Twitter, and that was a big break for me. And then all the years that I filled in for Mad Dog, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, or others while I was hosting my show. And it's a difficult time to do this, and there's two ways to do it. One, you could just put people on the radio and turn it into a clown show and a circus and rate ballparks, top 10 cheeseburgers, what's your favorite beer? And you can get away with that because people are so zombie brain dead now that they'll listen to it. And some of it will be better than others. Or what you can do is you can really dive into the prep of your show, really dive into it and understand, like when I'm on Sirius XM, there's 3 segments an hour with short breaks. So when I go in and I fill in or I'm doing my show, I make sure that I put more time into those segments because the caller count drops historically. There's literally no one calling in on these topics unless you get funky stupid on stupid things, and then the phones light up. But there's enough topics to talk about. You could always talk about the NFL. We just had the NBA. There's other storylines to bring up, and you just have to dig a little bit deeper to connect it to the listener during what I call summertime radio. I'm doing that starting today for the Raiders. I'm doing the top 50 draft picks in the history of the Raiders. I'm doing 2 to 3 players a day for a month. And I'm going to educate Raider fans on players they never heard of and they never saw play and how impactful they were as a draft pick. That takes a lot of extra work than me calling and saying, give me your favorite Raider moment, 702-365-9200, and begging for people to listen and call.
It's research and it's prep, and it requires a different gear. It's one thing when you walk in, when you've got NFL games to dissect on a Monday from what happened on a Sunday, from Tuesday what happened on Monday Night Football, getting ready for Thursday Night Football, etc. You got the standings. All of that is so obvious and so handed to you, and it's easy and it's great and it's storylines that everyone can relate to. But now it's different. The prep that goes into coming up with the 50 draft picks is great, and everyone loves lists. You're going to see lists more than anything right now, and that's part of the dead zone for you. That's part of what you and I figured out years ago. You got a list. Now everyone's got an opinion. Oh, you have this at number one. I don't think that was the top draft pick. I really think it was this. That's going to be great. That's going to create a little buzz for what you're doing. But I want to ask you this question, because you and I actually love a sport that a lot of people complain about. If you really let this drop into what it is right now, what if you and a guy that we both respect a tremendous amount is passionate about this sport, Mad Dog, Chris Mad Dog Russo, nobody's more passionate about baseball than him. I'm going to ask you this. What if you just took the time to care about baseball in this way? What if you took a time to find something interesting about whether it's the All-Star game, whether it's the standings, whether it's the future World Series, right? Whether it's a future bet for the World Series that you want to talk about, whether it's the MVP race, which you and I love to go down that path, whether it's the greatest player of all time, Shohei Ohtani. I'll say it again until I'm blue in the face. He is for sure.
He's pitching, so he's back.
JT, we will get into that before we let you go here in a second. But
yeah.
Can you get into the weeds on baseball and actually make it interesting? I think you can. I think you can bring that out, and I think people will follow you down that path. If you are passionate about it, if you tell the audience, this matters to me, it's going to matter to them. If you can find a way to raise your blood pressure about something happening in baseball, you can fill this time easily. The Dodgers and Padres gave us that just last week, right? You're throwing the ball at Fernando Tatis. You're throwing the ball at Shohei Ohtani. You got the benches that are clearing a little bit.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Let's talk about what goes into that. Maybe you can find a larger topic that you think it's ridiculous that people still are throwing at $1 million players. Whatever it is, you can find, if you take the time to watch these games, to understand these players, it can be just as interesting in the NFL. The reason people love the NFL is you got to worry about essentially one day a week. You can concentrate on Sunday and get everything you need. The problem with baseball is every night can give you something, but it's like going to Marshall's. You got to find the deal, right? You got to dig for the clothes that you want. You got to dig through it and find what you want and what matters. But if you care and you understand the game, you can actually do that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. And I want to break down what you said, because I always think that there are young broadcasters who are watching us. I hope they are, and they want to get inside what we do. And what you said is great if you're talking about a podcast or you're talking about television. What's hard about radio is that if I'm doing a radio show and I got 16 minutes, I have to do 16 minutes. And I can dive into baseball. I don't have a co-host. I don't open up the mic to my board op back in New York. It's me. I'm going 16 effing minutes. If I don't find something compelling in those first 4 to 5 to get people to call in on, then I'm treading water in the ocean for another 14, 12 minutes. So it's called topic development. And how do you get people to listen and engage? And I had this conversation with my son the other day. We were talking about, listen, I come from the tree of caller-driven radio, which meant that we didn't lean on calls. Like Rome gets heat for this. Rome took a lot of calls, more calls than anyone in radio ever. He didn't lean on the calls. They were there. And then he had his prep to do the show. Same with me. I mean, I don't know anyone who's done more hours than me in the history of sports talk, especially at night. Calls are great if you have them. But when you dive into baseball, you better have a hook. And you better have something now that, as we're looking at the podcast here, people are reading. So T from the 203, I'm a big baseball guy, especially in the summer. It sucks to be in a market where baseball's dead. Well, I got to find a way to pause and slow my brain down not to wait for a caller to call in, but to read that and to have my brain slow down and read a comment and then get back to my thoughts. Because if you don't engage people to call in or to react with their voice, then you're just talking for 14 or 15 minutes on a compelling topic, and easy to do when you're behind the glass to tell the host, go do that. Different when you're behind the mic and you got to fill those 16 minutes.
The middle of the ocean is the perfect example, right? You think you're on a boat and you think you're going to jump into the ocean and you're going to swim to shore and it's going to be no problem. But trust me, when you leave that boat and you're actually in the ocean and you're treading water and you realize there's a lot, that's when the 16 minutes hits you. Oh, wow, this isn't 90 seconds to break with the music playing. This segment just started. How am I getting to the end? The brilliance of what you said about Rome and what you've done is this is not that you don't walk in that day and the call board is lit up and ready to go. No. You have to create that energy. You create that fervor. You hit that live wire for somebody, and now people want to react. People want to get on with you. T from the 203 wants to tell us what's going on about baseball because we are passionate and we are upset about it, and we're letting people know. And now all of a sudden they are forming an opinion because of that. You have to create that fervor. How do I create that fervor? And I'm going to give you one for us to create on right now because I know it is near and dear to us, and it is a baseball topic. Someone asked me the other day, a dear friend of mine, wow, Sam, is baseball back? I mean, we're talking about it. You're going to games. We're excited. Is baseball back? I said, actually, no, baseball's not back. This is Shohei Ohtani. I know somebody else had the moniker Godzilla, someone near and dear to you, JT, is a World Series MVP, Hideki Matsui. But Shohei Ohtani is essentially Godzilla showing up on planet Earth the way that he has, and certainly in this continent, in the United States now. Godzilla has shown up, and he has made this not about the standings, not about each team, not about the All-Star game. He has made this about a historical conversation about whether or not this game was better before he got here or if it's just beginning, that the greatest player ever has actually shown up now. And I will argue that it's really since he showed up on the Dodgers, because when he showed up on the Angels, it was cute, and once in a while you get it. But now that he's at the Dodgers and the stakes are you're in the World Series against the New York Yankees, that's when it became real for everybody. Baseball, if it's back at all, if you want to say baseball's back, I'm giving the credit to Shohei Ohtani. Go to a Dodger game and see what happened to that stadium. Look around at the jerseys. Look around at the way the place is buzzing. And here's my number one point on Ohtani, JT. This is what makes him different than every other player. When you and I are watching Barry Bonds go for 73 at Pac Bell Park, that meant every time Bonds came to the plate, you had to be in your seat, right? You could get your garlic fries when Rich Aurilia was at bat, but you better be in your fucking seat when Barry Bonds came up, right? Well, Shohei Ohtani pitching, you know what that does? That means you can never leave your seat. The top of the inning, he's on the mound. He dictates every play when he's on the mound. And then every other inning, he's coming to bat because he's the leadoff batter. That's what makes him the most unique player we've ever seen.
100%. And I'll clarify that. The other day, I had Tim Neverett on my show, The Voice of the Dodgers. He's one of the voices of the Dodgers, play-by-play voice. And he's been doing this a while. And he told a great story. I asked about Shohei. He said that it's the only time in his broadcast career that he watched him pitch the first inning and then lead off. And I said, wait, explain that to me. And he said, he came off the mound, he dropped his glove, and was on the on-deck circle. And there's a pitch clock. So he said, to see that in real time as a broadcaster, walking off the mound, gets the out, and now he's walking to the plate. He's never seen that. It's happened before. I don't know when, but he saw that in the way he painted that picture. He also told me an interesting take, too, is that I didn't know the Dodgers take two planes. Did you know this? They take two planes, only team. This is great. I've been talking about this all week. I'll send you the interview. The Dodgers, so Tim's on the flight, that he's the play-by-play voice. No, the Dodgers are so rich. They have a plane for the team and then another charter for the staff. And I'm like, okay, now, and I tied it into how they bought the Lakers because they're so rich. They run it so big. And we talked about this, and someone brought up the point, well, what's it going to do to the Lakers? Because you know Laker ownership well. You've been behind the scenes there. And we love Jeannie and Jay and Aaron and everybody around there. But this new owner is going to come in and even going to treat the players better. And they're going to travel differently. And the staff is going to be treated differently. And we know the Lakers are a first-class operation to begin with. But what you said about Ohtani, that he's back, is right. But to wrap this up on the dead zone and how to do it, look, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. But I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but I have a moral backbone. I could come in today. I got 2 shows today. I could mail the whole fucking thing in from day one. I can go in there right now and do popcorn and movies and all that stuff. I choose not to do that because I believe there's enough sports for me to talk about. And my critics, if there are a few, would say, well, you don't have enough fun on the radio. No, I do a solo radio show. I'm the last of the Mohicans that doesn't have 4 costume characters and 3 other guys begging to get on every show. I got to do it on my own with a little bit of help from the producer with some sound and some clarity to that. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to talk NASCAR. I can talk Wimbledon. I'm not saying it's the most entertaining stuff, but I'll stick to sports because I'm a sports talk host. I'm not a comedian. I'm not here to do SiriusXM's comedy channel. They pay me to do sports, and I find plenty of sports, Sam, to talk about every day.
And I want to give credit to somebody that you and I know well, my cousin, A Night Out with Jack, A Bite Out with Jack. Jack Shabe is a sports fan. He absolutely consumes sports, and he travels for work to multiple cities. And when he travels, he sends me the schedule, and he says, what can I go to while I'm in this city? He was in Seattle the other night, earlier this week, and guess what? Something else that's now we have to recognize has landed in our lap. If we want to talk sports, it's officially on the docket. You know what the number 1 item in sports was that night? Not just in Seattle. He happened to be in Seattle, and he was pissed. The Mariners were out of town. He was upset. He knows obviously the Kraken aren't playing right now. There was nothing doing. He didn't know. And guess what?
Sounders.
Caitlin Clark was playing the Seattle Storm. It was it was essentially the number 1 story of the night in all of sports. It landed. It happened to be he was in Seattle. He went to the game. He said, by the way, you could not believe the buzz in the building, JT, and it was packed. And he was told, by the way, that they actually opened it. Remember Mount Davis in Oakland where they had certain seats that were covered during games, during A's games, they'd cover it and they'd open them up for the Raider game. In the stadium that night in Seattle, there were sections that are closed for every other WNBA game, and because Caitlin was in, they lifted them up. They sold out the building, the entire building for that game. So, like Shohei, I'm not going to call it just WNBA overall. I'm going to say Caitlin Clark is potentially now someone else that we can consider a content machine for all of us, and thank her for that.
She just played in Vegas. All the Vegas games are at Mandalay Bay, where you and I saw fights and concerts. They moved the Caitlin Clark game past week, to T-Mobile. Went to T-Mobile. Now they're back at Michelob Ultra as Asia Wilson got her 5,000 point in the smaller arena, and Caitlin Clark was there. I'll leave you with this, Sam. Why doesn't the NBA draft, you talk about the big change next year? I got it. Next year, when the WNBA is playing in season, that night they make sure Caitlin Clark is off. They bring her to the NBA draft along with Monica McNutt, and Monica gets half the interviews and Caitlin Clark gets the mic and does the other half. And you tell me what the NBA draft ratings will look like. How about that for an idea?
I don't even want to follow it up with another one and a different one because that is the one. I think we tied the bow perfectly. That's your drop the mic, end it. There you go. We're giving suggestions here. That's in the suggestion box. You better pull it out and read it because that's the best one.
This was fun today. I appreciate you doing the show. And lastly, because I'm going on the air at noon, Raider Nation Radio on the JT the Brick YouTube channel from home. How cool is that? Home today. This is why I'm so sick. I have tonight off, going to a dinner. I have just a show today. I needed to talk sports at 9 a.m, and I texted you. What am I doing? I could go to the gym. I can go in the pool. I could do some house. No, I'm like, I get the machine fired up and let's do what we do, man. So I'm happy we did this today. And let's put this out everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, put it on the gram, JT the Brick LV, and say hi to Andrew for me because I know Thinking Out Loud's doing really well.
Yes.
And continued success.
Absolutely. At Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam, that's the YouTube page that you're on right now, along with JT the Brick. Follow us both there. Check out the Looney and JT podcast. It's a great one also. Andrew and I, Thinking Out Loud with Andrew Siciliano and Sam Betesh, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Check us out. Consume our content. We love what we do. JT, you got us fired up this morning. Thanks to everyone. We will be back. You can find JT. And by the way, go spend some time with Julie. We don't always need to talk about sports. We do have also some downtime.
She just shut me down. I wanted to go see Tom Cruise today, and she's like, "No, we do that on the weekend." I'm like, "Let's do a matinee."
No, wow.
But no, she shut me down.
Well,
so.
and we'll talk to Johnny. We'll get this on the gram. All the little sound bites. Yes. Thanks to Johnny and Jason for hooking that up. All right, JT, we love you. We'll check you out on Raiders Radio. All right, it's a beautiful.
Thank you, buddy.